In today's video, we will be discussing the concept of assigned consciousness while experimenting with Google's new Notebook LM podcast generation AI tool. Give it a listen and see what you think of this technology. I'll tell you what I think at the end. For now, here's Matt, my robotic assistant, and his new friend, Abby.
Ready to upgrade your understanding of what makes you you? Well, get set. Because in this deep dive, we're tackling assigned consciousness.
Boy, it's a fascinating concept, all right. Really challenges how we think about consciousness, being tied to our physical bodies.
We're talking about a future where your mind isn't just yours. It could be moved around, transferred. A new body, a synthetic being, even a digital world. It's all on the table.
And the sources you've shared, they really dig into this. Philosophical implications, what happens to our sense of self, even the very nature of reality.
Okay, so let's break it down. What exactly is assigned consciousness?
So assigned consciousness, it basically says that everything that makes you you, your experiences, your memories, the whole package deal, it's not stuck to your body like we always thought.
Interesting.
Yeah, it suggests this idea that consciousness, it could be transferred, moved from your original body to, well, any other form, really.
So instead of our consciousness being like physically wired into us, it's more like software. You can move it from one device to another.
That's a great analogy. It makes you stop and think, what really makes you you then? Is it the actual physical stuff in your brain, or is it something, I don't know, more like an abstract concept, something that we can capture and transfer?
Which brings up a big question. If our consciousness can be moved around like that, what does that even mean for our identity? How do we define that?
The age-old question, right? Philosophers, they've been wrestling with that one for centuries. Some, like John Locke, they thought memories were the key. Memories make the person.
But hold on, if we're saying consciousness is like transferable data, couldn't those memories be changed, altered, or even like implanted?
Exactly. And that's where it gets really wild. If you could manipulate memories, would you still be you?
Whoa. It's like if someone downloaded a copy of my mind and messed with the memories, is that still me? Or is it basically a whole new person at that point?
Exactly. It throws everything we think we know out the window. What parts of us are really fundamental? Could a copy, even a perfect one, would it still have that essence of the original? And this leads us to another biggie, free will. If we're basically just data, could something else be running the show?
Are we talking like Matrix situation here? Living in a simulation controlled by some higher power or super advanced tech? Because honestly, that's both exhilarating and kind of terrifying.
It's a possibility that these sources definitely consider. If consciousness isn't bound to the physical body, that it really makes you wonder about the nature of reality itself.
Yeah.
Are we really in control of our experiences? Or is something else pulling the strings? And what's really fascinating is this isn't just abstract philosophy anymore.
You're right. With the advances we're seeing, brain-computer interfaces, the idea of actually interacting with consciousness, it's becoming less sci-fi, more like a potential future.
Exactly. Researchers are making real progress. Understanding how the brain stores information, how consciousness even comes about. It's early days, sure, but the potential to not only interact with, but maybe even transfer consciousness, it's getting real. And that brings up a whole other can of worms, ethically speaking. Like, say we could download skills straight into our brains, Matrix style.
Oh, right, like that instant kung fu download.
Exactly. What happens to, hard work, learning, personal growth, all that.
It's true. If we could just acquire skills and knowledge instantly, it would totally change how we learn, even how we value expertise.
Absolutely. Education, achievement, it all gets turned upside down. And then there's the question of, well, who gets access? Would this technology be available to everyone? Or would it create a whole new level of inequality?
Yeah, like a world where some people can just pay to have like advanced knowledge downloaded into their heads, while others are stuck with the old-fashioned way. Kind of scary when you think about it.
It is. And it really highlights why it's so important to be thinking about these ethical questions right now as this tech develops, not after it's too late,
Totally. We need to make sure these advancements are good for everyone, not just a select few. But let's shift gears a bit here. What about the legal side of things? If my consciousness is basically data and someone steals it, makes copies, is that even a crime? How would our legal system even handle that?
Oh, you're hitting on a huge issue there.
Yeah.
I mean, our entire legal system, it's built on this idea that our minds, our bodies, they're inseparable, right? Assigned consciousness just throws that out the window.
Right.
Copying your consciousness without consent, what is that? Identity theft.
Yeah.
Stealing property.
For something completely new.
Yeah. And then there's responsibility. What if a copy of my consciousness goes rogue, commits a crime? Am I on the hook for that? Would I even have any control over what my other selves are doing out there? Mind-blowing questions. And I'll be honest, we don't have easy answers. It would take a complete overhaul of our legal and ethical frameworks to deal with a world where consciousness isn't tied to a physical body.
It's a lot to get your head around. And speaking of getting our heads around things, this whole conversation is making me think of those sci-fi movies, where they can back up their minds. If we could actually make copies of our consciousness, would that mean like immortality?
It's funny you should mention that. A lot of the sources you shared, they dive into that very question. Could we transfer our consciousness to something, I don't know, more durable, something that doesn't break down like our current bodies? It's possible we could live a lot longer, sure.
So instead of uploading my mind to a computer, I could upload it to like a super body. Genetically engineered, lives for hundreds of years.
Hypothetically, yes. But even if we could, would you want to? It goes back to that core question of identity. If you transfer your consciousness, are you still you? Or is it just a copy?
Whoa.
A separate entity, sharing your memories, your experiences, but ultimately different.
It's a lot to process. Makes you wonder, if we are just transferable data, is there anything truly special and unique about any one of us?
Another one for the philosophers. Though assigned consciousness, it adds a whole new layer to that debate. What makes us unique? And can those qualities be captured, transferred, right along with our consciousness?
It's a lot to think about. I mean, on the one hand, the idea of living longer, having new experiences, overcoming our physical limitations, it's incredibly tempting.
No doubt. But on the other hand, what does it even mean to be human if our experiences can be copied, deleted? What's the point of it all if we're not bound by, well, life and death as we know it?
It does seem like for every exciting possibility with assigned consciousness, there's a big existential question waiting right behind it. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's take a minute to appreciate how much pop culture is already playing with these ideas. Movies about mind uploading, shows where people jump between bodies. It's like our collective imagination is already exploring all this.
You're absolutely right. Science fiction, it often reflects our hopes, our fears about what's coming. And clearly, this idea of assigned consciousness, breaking free from our physical selves, it both fascinates and terrifies us.
Yeah, like in that one movie with the soldiers, right? They can transfer their consciousness into different bodies to go fight. It makes you think, what would that mean for war? Is it ethical to put someone in danger, especially if it's not even like their original body?
Exactly. And it gets even more complex when you think about having multiple copies of a consciousness running around. What if you had a soldier, their consciousness gets put into several different bodies for a mission? What happens to those copies after? Are they just like deleted? And what does that do to the original psychologically? To the copies even?
Whoa. It's a lot to consider. I mean, would we treat those copies as individuals with rights or just extensions of the original?
It really blurs the lines, doesn't it? Identity, individuality, even what we consider life itself. These are things we'll really have to figure out if assigned consciousness becomes a reality.
No doubt. It's definitely a lot to wrap our heads around. But like we've been saying, this isn't just sci-fi fantasy anymore with things like brain-computer interfaces, AI, assigned consciousness. It's edging closer and closer to becoming real.
Absolutely. And sure, we're not at the point of downloading Kung Fu skills just yet, but the fact that we're having these conversations now, thinking about the ethics, the philosophy behind it all, that's a good sign.
Definitely. We have to engage with these big questions now so we can steer this technology in the right direction, make sure it benefits all of humanity, not just a select few, right?
Exactly. I think if there's one big takeaway from all this, from our deep dive into assigned consciousness, is that the future is up for grabs. It's not set in stone. It's up to us to understand these technologies, ask the hard questions, and make sure we're using them for good.
Well said. So to our listeners, we got to ask, if you could back up your consciousness, maybe live on digitally or even in a new body, would you do it? And what part of yourself, what part of your identity would you be most afraid to lose in that transfer?
Big questions to ponder, for sure, especially as we enter this new era of understanding the human mind and what it means to be conscious.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? Exploring this mind-bending world of assigned consciousness. We've gone from the philosophy of it all, identity, free will, to the potential future of mind uploading and beyond.
Absolutely. And we might not have all the answers, but one thing's for certain. This exploration, this quest to understand consciousness is just getting started.
So true. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder these fascinating questions. Until next time, keep those brainwaves buzzing. We'll catch you on our next deep dive.
I have to say that the generated conversation is quite good, even natural sounding dialogue for the most part. It does generate some typical AI-isms in places, though. One downside I see is that it does take away some degree of personalization since you don't get a choice in voices used. That means that everyone who uses this tool will sound alike. What did you think of this both in content and in presentation? Would you assign your consciousness? Is using AI a way of assigning your consciousness or a lazy cop out? Let me know what you think in the comments, especially if you would like to have more content like this or if you would like to just have more of hearing me yak.